We'll get half of this done today. I am going to talk about ancient India from the background of India up to like the background of Hinduism, which is, of course, the main religion of modern India today. Of course, first thing I do need to talk about overall is, I guess, the background of India. Oh, by the way, if anybody, I don't think it's like anybody's on Facebook right now, but anybody's in Facebook that wants to come in, I don't know if anybody is or not, can't tell, but that is the link to come into StreamYard if you want to join me. That's it right there. And if anybody has any questions, by the way, about the lecture, whether right now, if you're watching the stream, you can send me a comment or question, because I can see Facebook, of course, also. And it's like in StreamYard, we've got Martha and Tyresha. So that's the only two we got now. So there's plenty of room if you want to come in and watch me lecture this live stream here, of course, through using StreamYard and Facebook Live. Okay. All right. So anyway, of course, ancient India, or India itself, has different names. Of course, India is the name that they commonly call it because of, the Indus River, which is very famous in that region today in South Asia. Of course, in India, they call their state oftentimes Republic of India, but also Bharat or Bharata. That's the common name, which I think was named after some ancient king of India a long time ago. Of course, India is the second oldest of the four river valley civilizations. You can see it's based around two rivers, the Indus River, mostly in Pakistan, and the Ganges River, which is mostly in eastern India and part of Bangladesh. So that's where it's located. And this is all part of the Indus-Ganges River Valley civilizations that were pretty much there in South Asia around ancient India. So this civilization goes back a long way. It's 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, I think, is maybe when it started. Some people think it started back before that as well, because ancient India is the second oldest river valley civilization behind Mesopotamia. So it is pretty old as a civilization overall. Now, get more, of course, into India. I'll talk later about the Indus Valley civilization, which, of course, first started in that region that we're talking about. And kind of a little information about the geography of India first that I need to talk about. India is a large area. It's about 1.2 million square miles. That would be roughly equivalent to about a third of the size of the United States. So it's pretty large in size. It's kind of famous for its peninsula shape, which looks like a diamond, which you can see in that picture on the right. Of course, India is famous for being one of the two largest populated regions of the world, behind China. The second largest, I think it's like 1.3 billion people now overall, which is a lot. So it's pretty big. It's like 4 times the size population-wise as the United States is. I think we're like 330 million. But I think we're kind of a larger area. So they've got a lot of people living in tightly, in some, I know, like in New Delhi and Bombay. It's, heavily populated cities and all that. India, of course, has different nicknames. I told you Bharat or Bharata is the common, the name that they use a lot for India. But a lot of people do call India the so-called subcontinent or Indian subcontinent or subcontinent of India. It's a name that's kind of been around a while. The reason why is because India is a region of like Asia that is a subdivided area. So it's a subcontinent or subdivision of a continent. Some people call it. Why is that? Mostly because it's separated by mountains that are mostly on the northern part of it. So if you look at it from outer space, you'll often see mountains above India in the shape of a peninsula. That's usually what it looks like overall. And so it's kind of a unique area of the world. It's kind of located like above the Indian Ocean. It's considered what they call South Asia. That's what they usually call it. What mountains subdivided? There's like really two main mountain chains, which you can kind of see in that picture on the right. You got the Hindu Kush, which is kind of like to the northwest of India, like around where Pakistan is. It's famous where the Khyber Pass is, which I'll talk about later. And then the Himalayas, or Himalayan mountains, of course, to the north of India as well. So there's a lot of mountains to the north of India, which makes it very difficult to get into India. And most invaders that do come into India later come down through the Hindu Kush using like passes like you may have heard of, the Khyber Pass, which I'll get to later. I think on the eastern side, like around the delta of the Ganges, you see the Ganges is kind of on the right side, Indus on the left. I think it's kind of swampy over there more with that delta area, jungles and stuff like that to the east. So kind of hard to kind of get in from that way also as well. So India is pretty isolated, that's why its culture was able to kind of develop. Also, I need to talk about, like when you talk about ancient India a long time ago, it was made up of different parts of that region of South Asia. I think there's a picture showing you like the area like around India today. New Delhi, of course, is the capital of the Republic of India. And you can see how the area is mostly made up of multiple countries, which have since, or were actually one area that's kind of ancient India, but since the 20th century, they've all kind of broken up overall. Of course, Republic of India is in the middle, which you can see right here. You've got Pakistan over here. Pakistan separated from India in 1947, so-called partition of India. This happened after the British Empire started breaking up. Nepal, which is above here. Bhutan's kind of in the same area. Bangladesh is also here. And on here, you have this little island nation. It's off the coast of India called Sri Lanka as well. Sometimes called Ceylon, Ceylon. And so that's all kind of the area that was kind of considered somewhat ancient India, like a long time ago. So that's it, pretty much it. India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan. Now, another thing I need to talk about too that's very important about India is the so-called Indus-Ganges plain or Indo-Gangetic plain. It's called different names, that area is very important. It's like the floodplain of the Indus-Ganges River Valley, of those two rivers and its tributaries that are there. That's a very large size area. It pretty much goes from, you can see where the Indus River Basin is to the left side, and which would be the west side over here. And then it goes all the way to the east to what is Bangladesh and Bhutan. So that's about the area we're talking about. It's an area that's about 2,000 miles across from west to east. Now, that area is kind of famous for being today very populated. You can see there it's got close to 1 billion people that live there. That's a lot. Like I think New Delhi is considered one of the most populated cities, which is in that area. It's kind of up in this area up in here. This area was very important a long time ago because that's where agriculture started in India. It started in the Indus-Ganges plain from probably west to east, starting in the Indus and going east towards the Ganges area, Ganges River. And also it was where the first civilization started, like especially we'll get to later, the Indus Valley civilization, which started around Pakistan and part of India. And so that's why that area is kind of important. Today, it's still important. There's a lot of farming going on pretty much in that area. It's where, of course, the majority of the people live there, in India and also Pakistan that you're looking at. Also, you can't see it. It's kind of that area kind of below it on the bottom of that map, right below the Indus-Ganges plain. But there's an area called the Deccan Plateau. It's kind of this large-sized plateau area kind of a flat plateau, which runs from like the Indus-Ganges plain to the bottom of the peninsula of India, like close to the coastline and all that. And that's what they call it in India. And the northern part of it is kind of like maybe 3,000 feet, I think, above sea level. But by the time you get down to the bottom of India, it kind of slants down toward the Indian Ocean to maybe a few hundred feet, maybe 300 feet above sea level or something like that overall. So I guess that kind of helps what gives India its shape or whatever overall. And so that's just like the different geographic parts of India, which are, famous today, still overall. Now, I do need to talk about also what they call something that India is very, very famous for, and that is the monsoon season. That's something that India goes through quite a lot every year. This happens in not just there, but parts of Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa. They go through these monsoon rainy seasons that they have. And the main one, of course, they have is the summer monsoon, which is sometimes called the southwest monsoon. Why is it called southwest monsoon? Well, meteorologists call it that because during the summer months, usually around June, July when it starts, and it goes towards like September, it's pretty much ending right now, monsoon season, and the winds come off the Indian Ocean from like the southwest, hence the term southwest monsoon, and it affects that part of Asia. It also goes into Southeast Asia and all that. And this, the monsoon season is very important because that's the time when majority of India gets its rain, its moisture, precipitation that it needs so it can grow crops. And so close to 80% of the rain that, falls during the year occurs during the monsoon season. So, and then they have like a winter dry season, like a winter monsoon that happens after that, usually from October to maybe the spring, where the winds actually reverse. They come from the north, and so they have more of a drier climate and all that. So that really affects India still today, not just back in ancient times or whatever. They're still affected by the monsoon. And I think what I've read the last 20, 30 years, I know India has not been getting enough rain like they should. So it is affecting their agriculture. A lot of places aren't getting a lot of rain like they should, like Africa and other areas. No, California's not because they burn it up and all that. So I guess it's a lot of climate change that's kind of going on. That's kind of affecting it, but maybe why it's not raining so much. My wife just had like a friend that lives over there in India, and it's like she's always like talking about how it's flooding and everything like that. And like I know, like along the Indus River, they sometimes get bad flooding. Like in Pakistan, they get real bad flooding when they get the monsoon. And sometimes it wipes out villages and stuff like that. It's common. So, and of course, I mention the 10 o'clock, I think, lecture I did, that sometimes that region of South Asia sometimes gets hit by what they call cyclones, which are what we call hurricanes. We get the same thing here, and sometimes occasionally it happens, not that often, but they do get it. Same thing in East Asia, they get hit by cyclones like Japan and Philippines and all that. And they have also been hit by tsunamis, like the one in 2004. You might know about the Boxing Day, I think, tsunami, I think they called it originally. Oh, these are the kind of crops they mostly grew in ancient India, if you want to know originally. Of course, cotton, something they're famous for in India. They still grow a lot of cotton, This shirt's probably made from, Indian cotton. And, of course, rice also as well. Grains like, I guess, barley, wheat, and things like that are the kind of crops that they grow overall. And still a lot of these they still grow, of course, in India and other kind of crops as well. Yeah, the winter monsoon's kind of got a dry season, so lack of precipitation, so it's not as much, compared to, the monsoon summer season. All right, moving on. I do need to, of course, start talking about different civilizations, of course, of India. Of course, the one they always talk about which is the first civilization of India, is the one that's called the Indus civilization, or often called, of course, the other name they dub it is the Indus Valley civilization. That was considered the earliest civilization in India a long time ago, thousands of years ago, of course, when this civilization existed. And this civilization of India developed in the Bronze Age. I think the date of when it started was like 3 to 4,000 BC. So it puts it basically in what is a time frame that's the same as like Mesopotamia with like the Sumerians. I think some people think they're around, almost the same as old as Sumerians were. They may even traded with the Sumerians, like economically and stuff like that. The civilization's mostly found in Pakistan. So that's where most of it is, although they do think they lived in northern India and also part of western India and maybe Afghanistan. So that's about where they were overall. They do have two names for it. It's called Indus Valley Civilization. And the original name they called it was Harappan Civilization, is what they called it because of Harappa, which I'll mention about a little bit later. But the dating of, Indus Valley, it's definitely over 5,000 years ago. 6,000 is probably about right overall. And so they started calling it Indus, because they started finding settlements all over the place from the mouth, I guess close to the mouth of the delta of the Indus River up into like northern India where the Punjab region is. So that's why I started calling that. And Harappan was kind of a name they still use, but they don't use it as much overall. You see in that slide there on the left that 1850s is about when they first discovered actually the civilization, because nobody knew about it till modern times. Like a railroad crew found it apparently. And the first city they found was called Harappa. And I think it was in 1800s. And then they think sometime around World War I, archaeologists, mostly British ones, probably originally started doing excavations, either 1910s or 1920s, one of the two. And they started mostly at those two sites originally, which were Harappa first, and then another one later called Mohenjo-Daro. Those are the two that they did mostly. And they've found other ones, but those are the two most famous ones that they found in back in ancient India. And most of these cities that we're talking about, the largest ones were 30 to 40,000 population-wise. Like Mohenjo-Daro was maybe close to 40,000 people, they think, 3 square miles, which is pretty large in size for that time. And primarily their cities were made of mud brick, which is just like the Sumerian ones, which is interesting about it. I don't know if they're related or not. Nobody really knows for sure. But Harappa was first found like in the northern part of Pakistan, close to where the Punjab region is. And so that's why they called it originally Harappan civilization. But then after that, they started finding all these other ones all over the place. I think Mohenjo-Daro was found, I want to say in the 1920s as well. And so I think they found over 1,000 of them, like settlements and villages all up and down around the river basin. But I think maybe 100 or more have been excavated. They've worked on them. But Mohenjo-Daro is the most famous, of course, of those cities. I do have some pictures of Mohenjo-Daro I can kind of share with you. Here's one showing like a larger view. That's one of the top right logo you can see as well on the screen. So that's one picture. You can see its famous citadel in the background, the citadel of Mohenjo-Daro, which must have been part of some kind of fortification that guarded the city overall. You can see a lot of it's been rebuilt. So that's kind of what they think it looked like. Doesn't necessarily mean it was, but they do know that a lot of their buildings, they do think they had multi-story buildings, like more than one story at one point overall. But that's kind of like what they think it looked like. And on this slide here, you can see that Mohenjo-Daro, or Dara, looks to be Daro usually, is a name that meant either hill of the dead or mound of the dead. Because apparently when they were doing excavations at the site, they found like mass graves where people had been where had been buried there. And so that's why they called it that. Others call it the city of the dead because of those dead bodies they found in there. So somebody might have called it that too, as well. And Mohenjo-Daro is famous for different things. It's a lot of the Indus cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were known for a lot of technological advancements, which I've got there on the screen for you. They did have a written language, which was called Indus script. And it's also called Harappan script. And Indus script was some kind of early pre-Indian language of some type that was written on tablets. And they haven't been able to translate it. It's one of the mysteries about the Indus script and all of that. But they do think it might be comparable to later languages in India, like Dravidian, that's still around, just I think still spoken in parts of maybe India, like southern India maybe. So that's one thing they did have. They'd have a language system, and we could maybe figure out translate the language. We might be able to get more information about this ancient people, because most of the history of the Indus civilization is from archaeology. Private wells. They found wells where people dug for water, fresh water. There are baths. I'll show you one later. It's very, very famous, which is the bath at Mohenjo-Daro. That's well known. They did have sewage systems where they drained sewage away from homes and other buildings. Drainage systems too, like when it would rain, water would be drained away from the city, like we have today in cities and neighborhoods and stuff like that. There were flush toilets. That's something that's quite common. Running hot, running cold water is something that was something they had in ancient times. Well, people don't know that, like plumbing and things like the Romans had plumbing, lead plumbing, but they did have a vast trade network that traded throughout India, Afghanistan, and they seem to think that the Indus people may have traded as far west as maybe Mesopotamia, like with the Sumerians and other people that were over there, maybe people in Iran and so on. Granary sites like at Harappa, they found a lot of metal work, like gold, silver, lead, copper, tin, no iron, of course, but pretty much a Bronze Age culture. They do think they had a strong central government, but they're not sure much about it. And pretty much most of their cities were built similar, like you saw in the video, on a grid system. So they were pretty advanced, the Indus people. It says there in the slide, they may have been several million that may have lived throughout that region and may have been one of the most populated civilizations so far before something happened to them and they declined. One feature about India that's very well, about Mohenjo-Daro that's very well known is the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro that's there at the site. And really one of the two most famous things there, that and the Citadel that kind of overlooks nearby. And the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro is considered one of the first baths in water tanks ever constructed, which was used for some kind of public bathing, which it's been debated about what it was used for. Of course, some believe that it may have been used for religious rituals, which is something they often do, like in Hinduism, like maybe bathing in the Ganges River or something like that. So it's possible that could have been used for that. So they think it may have been part of some kind of complex, because you can see how around it there's like columns around it that may have been there. And then they think it may have been part of some kind of temple complex that may have been across the street from it. So there may have been some religion, but they're not sure exactly what. If it was some kind of early form of Hinduism or something else, they don't really know. So there's a lot of mystery about that, and of course the Indus civilization that was there a long time ago. Now, of course, one of the things they always talk about, with the Indus civilization is what happened to it. That's been a big, big mystery, which has, by the way, often been compared to the Minoans and the Mayan culture. Minoans around Crete and Mayans in Mesoamerica. And so it's like overnight, they just declined and disappeared as a culture. So sometime maybe 1800 BC or later, they're not sure of the debate about the time, they think that there may have been several reasons why the culture declined. There's two popular theories I know that's the most famous, which is climate change. Something to do with the climate changing overall. What you see in that slide, it could have been that the river changed course or something happened with the river and maybe the monsoon season that could have caused it. Maybe it was too much rain and the river changed course. It's possible. Could be the other way around. Could have been that not enough rain. I don't know. Not sure which could have been. But it could have been something to do with the monsoon season, likely. Aryan invasion, of course, is the other thing that's real popular. The fact that they think sometime after 1700 BC that the Aryans came in. They took over parts of Pakistan and in India and probably Afghanistan. And so that ended that period because of it, because of getting invaded and all that. And that's considered a real popular theory, though there's some people that think it never happened. So it's been about a lot of debate about that. I kind of maybe think it probably did, but there's a debate about it, I think. It's kind of a controversy about whether it happened or not. So-called Aryan invasion or Aryan migration into that area. And that's something I did want to talk about, by the way, getting into the Aryan civilization. Here's kind of a map showing you a little bit about how maybe if that did happen, how they migrated into India. And the theory is that the Aryan peoples, which are Caucasian peoples, originated from an area that's kind of like Eurasia, around southern Russia. It's kind of like between Europe and Asia is where it's located. And the Indo-Aryans or Aryans were nomadic peoples. They had iron weapons. They introduced the chariot to India and would eventually take over, like I said, Pakistan in India. And I'll get to that in a second. I don't want to get to that. But they're very nomadic. You can see moving from place to place. Some moved westward. You can see from that area around the Caspian Black Sea, they went into parts of Europe, Scandinavia, Southern Europe. Then, of course, some even migrated down into Turkey as well down here. And some started migrating eastward, southeastward into Iran and then India area. So I told you about this before, but the people that are in Iran were often called Indo-Iranians. So they're related to the Indo-Aryans, same kind of people, basically. And the ones that go into India are often called Indo-Aryans. That's the term they use in modern India today, in that area. So basically, that's the theory anyway about how the Aryans come in, and start taking over that area. That's what really happened. Now, I need to talk about the term Aryan. That's another thing, of course, which has often confused a lot of people before about that. The term Aryan is a Sanskritic word that means either freeborn or born of noble birth. So they're basically they're not slaves, they're free peoples, and they're considered like an upper class. So the Aryans, I think when they came into India, wanted to differentiate themselves from the indigenous people that were already there. So they've kind of used this other name. And the ones in India, like I said, are called Indo-Aryans. And people often confuse the term Aryan with, the Nazis, the Aryan race and all that stuff they always talk about. And if you know about Hitler and the Nazis, believed that the Aryan peoples that originated somewhere, like I said, in southern Russia, migrated into Europe. They became this master race, which Germans are related to. So maybe they might be. I don't know. It's possible. They might know, they likely are. It's not related to them because they're Indo-Europeans. But well, they're a master race. I don't know about that. That kind of deal. But that's where the term came from. But it's not like exactly the same thing we're talking about over here. Like I said, the Aryans brought in iron weapons. So that may have been why, they were able to conquer pretty much the Indus people, because they still had probably bronze weapons and all that. So war chariot, and stuff like that. So that enabled them to basically take over, and conquer the area and pretty much, develop their civilization after that. Now, the other things that they did too, that's famous about the when the Indo-Aryans came into India, was they brought in their own language that was called Sanskrit. Sanskrit is a type of Indo-Aryan language, one of the oldest in the world. Date back 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. So they're like the oldest one, period, over other ones. Sanskrit is considered like the mother language of pretty much most modern Indian languages used today, like dialects often called Indic, not excluding, of course, English, which the British brought in later. But it's kind of like the mother languages of all those different dialects that are spoken. Pretty much all the ancient books, manuscripts that go back to ancient India are all written in Sanskrit, a long time ago. Of course, you see there the other thing that the Aryans brought in was the so-called Vedas, or Veda, that are very, very famous in like Hinduism now. The Vedas are these religious scriptures or texts that the Aryans brought in something like 3,000 to 4,000 years ago into India. There's I'll get to it later, there's like 4 of them that have survived from ancient times. The Vedas are very important because they're the basis of like Hinduism's religious theology. It also talks about a lot of theories and stories about their gods, which in Hinduism they have must be millions of them, millions of gods. I forget how many exactly they think they have, but it's a lot. Millions or million gods. The word Veda or Vedas means knowledge in Sanskrit because it was believed to be knowledge given to them by their gods. There's 4 Vedas that have survived from ancient times. They got the Rig Veda, which is the oldest, which has over 10,000 verses in it, which I think in Hinduism they call a verse a mantra. And then you have the other 3 that are famous: Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. All combined, like all 4 of them together, it's over 20,000 verses total. That's a lot. Originally, they think that the Vedas were oral, like the priests memorized them and chanted them. And then over time, during a period called the so-called Vedic Age, starts about 1500 BC, they began to write them down in India, which the Vedic Age maybe goes down to close to maybe 500 BC. You can see there's some other ones in there that are mentioned. You might see that slide. Brahmanas and the Upanishads. Those are later subdivisions of the Vedas, which were written later. Maybe closer to like 1,000 to 500 BC in that time range. All those are considered pretty important part of the scriptures of the Vedas. So kind of a little background, talking about, the how the Aryans brought in Hinduism. Now, I need to get into and talk about how they got. I didn't talk about how they got in. That's one thing I did want to mention real quick about that before I talk about some of the background about the religion of Hinduism. But I forgot to talk about how the Aryans, they think, got into India. The main theory they believe is they came down through the Hindu Kush in what is the Khyber Pass, which is considered one of the most famous passes in the world. You got a slide right here about it. So it's a very important mountain pass through. It's about 33 miles long. And it's been used as an invasion route for years. It's also been a trade route as well, trade going back and forth, and kind of a highway system between, I guess, from Afghanistan to Pakistan. And a lot of invaders have used the Khyber Pass many times. So the most famous, who came down the pass, about this, was Alexander the Great when he conquered part of India. The 4th century BC. So other people have come down too, besides like the Aryans. You've had like the Mongols invaded through there at one point. Also, there's been a lot of Muslim invaders that have also come down through there as well. I think the Mughals that developed later or kind of came down through there as well overall. Right, I want to talk about one of the last things we need to do today, of course, is get into the religion of Hinduism. Hinduism is a religion that's traditionally been in India for thousands of years. You can go back, 3,000-4,000 years when they think Hinduism developed overall. And there's different schools of thought on Hinduism. There's no one clear thought about it, like school of Hinduism. And a lot of the religion is based off of like their Vedas scriptures that were brought in by the Aryans thousands of years ago. It's also based on the ideas of Dharma, which is very, very important, Dharma, karma. And it is one of those religions that's similar to like Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, that believes that souls of living things reincarnate. So reincarnation is a big part of a lot of the Eastern religions like Hinduism, just different from, say, the Western religions, which I'll talk about and compare later. A lot of times in the East, they'll call it Sanatana Dharma. That's one name I know that they sometimes call Hinduism, or variations of it. And it translates as meaning either eternal way or life or righteousness because I think two reasons. One, because of the idea of reincarnation, with the soul. And then the other has to do with Dharma, the belief in Dharma influencing that reincarnation and so on. So it is considered one of the oldest religions in the world. I think it's like up there with like, Judaism, Zoroastrianism. It's pretty old too, as well. So I'm not sure which ones are older than that. But those are the top ones I know that are oldest that are still kind of around today. You can see it is the third largest religion in the world behind Christianity and Islam. I think it's like 1.25 billion people practice it in the world, with most people practicing it in India. The Republic of India is where most of the religion is. And it's kind of a way of life, not just a religion. So it's mostly practiced in South Asia. Republic of India has a majority. Actually, the other one I was thinking about, the other class, I couldn't remember which one it was, but Nepal is the other one that has a majority of Hindu. So Republic of India and Nepal, those countries that are around the area in South Asia, they have a majority Hindu. And the rest are other religions that are there. Other areas that also have as well, but Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, they have also people that are Hindu as well, but they're a minority. So believe it or not, Indonesia is mostly Muslim. I don't know if you know that or not. It's a Muslim country. In fact, it's the largest Muslim country population-wise. That map there on the right kind of shows you where most of the people, that are, Hindu are, like I think in the green areas that you're looking at. But pretty much there's people that practice Hinduism kind of in and around India in that area. Now, I need to talk about some of their religious beliefs overall, like theology, like basic theology about Hinduism. There is one belief they do believe in, which is called Brahman. Brahman's kind of hard to explain. It really is. It's kind of a difficult term to kind of define. But a good definition right there is what it says. Brahman is the ultimate reality of the universe. Kind of translate that for you a little bit. What I mean by that is the fact that the universe is Brahman, like everything you touch, like say your desk you're at is part of Brahman. All living things are part of Brahman. Your soul or all souls are pretty much Brahman. That's basically what I mean by that. And so some people kind of compare it to like some kind of supreme being, which I guess it could be, but it's usually not considered that. But a lot of people kind of consider it, especially in the West. I think a lot of people in the West kind of see Brahman as like almost like a god. But all their gods, which are, like I said, a lot of them are kind of all part of Brahman, along with all souls and so on, all living things are all part of Brahman. So I hope you kind of understand that, but that's kind of what I mean by that. Now, also they do believe in something else, as some other beliefs that I want to share too with you, which they do believe in what is called Atman, which translates as meaning either soul or self in Sanskrit. That's the belief that all living things have a soul, not just like humans or whatever, but all living things. So from like humans down to animals to even insects, the dreaded mosquito, could have a soul. Worms, you might be digging in the ground, you find your worms, they might have souls. They probably do. They maybe could. I don't know. It's possible. Anyway, so that's a belief that they believe. A lot of Eastern religions, Buddhism believes it. I think the Jains believe it pretty much. Jainism, Sikhism, I think too as well. And so that's kind of counterintuitive to the West. The West is kind of like, I don't know about that. Insects and stuff like that. Maybe my dog, that kind of thing or something like that, but not that, but so then of course the other big difference, of course, in the East versus the West, a lot of these Eastern religions, they believe in reincarnation, this belief that every living thing kind of goes through a cycle of life and death, where you live your life, you die, and guess what? You get reborn again into some other living thing. So reincarnations is this where your soul is getting reborn in another living thing. And then they have this thing called samsara, which you see there. Samsara is like the eternal cycle of reincarnation, where your soul is being reincarnated over and over and over again, which might be forever, like eternally, which is what it means. And so that's pretty heavy, for the West, because in the West they think, we die, we go to heaven, we go to hell. We don't really believe that as much. Some people do believe that, but that's basically the difference between like Eastern religions versus say Western religions. Also, they do believe what they call karma. You may have heard about this. And karma is this where your actions and your deeds, things that you do in your life, can affect your future, your so-called destiny. So this could affect your present life. This could affect your next life. It's kind of like a cause and effect. Things you do in this life, what comes around goes around. And like, you do a lot of bad karma, bad things, you get bad rebirths. You do a lot of good things, you have good rebirths, it's believed. So you might come back in a higher form, wealthier, those kind of things. And so that's what, the idea of karma is. Then dharma is also one of the most important features that affects reincarnation too. That's the ones like right way of living, like how you live your life, living a straight life in general, following the laws of your country, the laws in your religious beliefs, religious sect, your duties, moral obligations, ethical conduct, how you treat yourself and how you treat others. Those kind of things can affect, also reincarnation. This is a belief not just in Hinduism, but it's heavy in also Buddhism. Like they talk about the 8 Dharma in Buddhism. Same thing in Jainism, Sikhism as well. All have kind of a similar belief as well. So these are all things that can affect, reincarnation. There's other things too, but just kind of giving you the 2 most famous ones that affect reincarnation, karma and dharma. They have moksha too. Moksha, basically, this belief where your soul will be liberated from reincarnation, the cycle of samsara over time, which dharma and karma could affect that, especially the dharma part could affect that. This is something that they think is going to happen, not just in Hinduism, but they think it's Buddhism, Jainism, etc. They believe the same thing, that eventually you will stop reincarnating. The Buddhists try to, figure a way, Jainis too, like a shortcut to try to end it in one lifetime or whatever. They have an equivalent, like Buddhism, Jainism, etc. They call it nirvana. So it's very similar. But who knows how long this takes? Like in Hinduism, I guess it might take, years, before you actually stop reincarnating. I guess you don't know. So anyway, so that's just some of the background of Hinduism. Later, I'm going to get more into like talk about some of the gods they believe in. That's something you probably want to know about because they have a lot of different gods. They're famous, which I'll talk about the basic ones that they have later. Then I'll also get into and talk about like Buddhism, the rise of Buddhism, and what Buddha did to try to break away from Hinduism. I'll talk about Jainism, and then also I'm going to talk about something you may have heard of called the Mauryan Empire. We'll get into that too, which was one of the first major empires that developed in India a long time ago. So that's it for lecture-wise. I am going to go ahead and review quickly, just a few minutes, and spend a little time reviewing over what we talked about today. And then I will talk about a few reminders before we go overall, especially about completing the first exam. Yeah, so let me go ahead and just talk about the things we covered today on ancient India. So it says, around what 2 major rivers did ancient India develop around? I told you the 2 rivers were the Indus, which is mostly in Pakistan, and the Ganges River, which is mostly in the eastern part of India and Bangladesh. What mountain ranges are north and northwest of India subdivided off from the rest of Asia? You got to the north, you've got the Himalayas. And then to the northwest, you've got Hindu Kush mountains where the Khyber Pass is. Why is India known as the subcontinent? Because it's kind of a subdivided region of Asia, which has been divided off from by mountain ranges that are kind of above it. There's actually 2 plates kind of rubbing together, which form the mountains and tectonic plates. That's what gives its name, the Indian subcontinent that people still use today when they talk about it. What present states or nations make up most of where ancient India was? Pakistan and India is the majority of it. And then like around where Bhutan is, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and I think there was one more, wasn't there? What was the other one they had too? I forgot. That was in the list. I can't remember for some reason. Yeah, Bhutan or Nepal. Almost forgot about Nepal. That was the other one, which is right above India. So Nepal. What was the Indus Ganges plain? That was an area which was in the northern part of India where the Indus Ganges rivers and its tributaries are. So it goes from like Pakistan to Bangladesh. What was important about it in ancient India? It's where basically farming or agriculture started a long time ago. It's also where the first civilizations took off, like in Pakistan, where they have the Indus civilization that started. What was the Deccan Plateau? The Deccan Plateau is a flat plateau area which is south of the Indus-Ganges plain. It goes down into the peninsula close to the coastline. So it's kind of a flat plateau area that's more on the bottom of India. What is the monsoon season? How does it affect the climate of India? The monsoon season, of course, was the rainy season of India. They often call it the summer monsoon or the southwest monsoon. And during the summertime, like around July to September, the peak of it, they usually have these rainy seasons which affect their climate and their economy and also their agriculture. And so the reason why it's important, the monsoon season, because that's where they get most of their precipitation or rain during the year, which I told you is like 80%. The rest of the year is like all dry season. Also, it says, what was the first civilization developed in India? Where was it discovered? The first civilization was the Indus Valley civilization, also called Harappan. It was found mostly in Pakistan along the Indus River basin, but it's located like in parts of northern India, parts of India, and also Afghanistan. What two cities were discovered in the 1920s, which were some of the largest found? Harappa was the first found, which I think may have been before that, like in the 1800s. And then they had Mohenjo-Daro, which was found, I think, around close to the 1920s, either 1920s or 1910s. What types of innovation or technology were they famous for? Well, they had their own language, which was called Indus script, which was written on tablets. They were known for their mud brick cities, like the Sumerians. They have evidence that cities like Mohenjo-Daro, that they had some kind of drainage systems, sewage systems. They had metal work I told you about, like they work with like gold, silver, lead, bronze type metals, granary sites, baths. I think I told you they have like some kind of private wells and things like that. Basically plumbing and things like that you think of later that people have. They had a lot of that technology-wise. Why did the Indus civilization decline? They believe it was caused by either a combination of climate change, maybe caused either by the monsoon season or the Indus River changed course. It's been very popular. Then, of course, the other theory is that they were conquered by the Aryan migrations or invasions that came into India. What culture or people invaded India from somewhere in Asia? What was their background? Of course, we're talking about the Aryans or Indo-Aryans, which is the common name they use in India. The Indo-Aryans were a type of Caucasian peoples. They came out of like close to southern Russia, like where the Caspian and Black Seas are. And they were a nomadic, warlike people that conquered vast amounts of territory, like from Europe all the way to India. They conquered at one point. They are an Iron Age people, you saw. And what does Aryan mean? Aryan means either noble birth or freeborn. The fact that they came from like upper class and they were trying to differentiate themselves from the indigenous people that were already there. They took them over and conquered them and all that. The Aryan or Indo-Aryans introduced different languages to India. The most common originally was Sanskrit, of course, which is an ancient Indo-Aryan language of India, which is the mother language I told you of pretty much all the later dialects that develop of Indic in India. Also, they brought in religious scriptures that are called Vedas or Veda, which means knowledge in Sanskrit. And these were the scriptures that were the text or basis of a lot of the Hindu theology and Hindu like gods or deities that they would have later. So it's the base of the religion, the Vedas. What is the oldest Veda scripture to survive from ancient times? The Rig Veda, R-I-G, which dates back maybe to 1500 BC. So Rig Veda is considered, they say, one of the oldest Indo-Aryan books ever written. What was the Khyber Pass? The Khyber Pass was a famous pass in the Hindu Kush. It's about 33 miles long. It's been, of course, a famous invasion route for invaders that wanted to get into India, such as the Aryans or the Greeks under Alexander the Great. And it's one of several passes that are actually there. There's actually another one called the Bolan Pass, if you want to know, just B-O-L-A-N. So it's a famous pass. It's also like a trade route and maybe like a highway that runs between Afghanistan and Pakistan and then into India. What main religion of India was influenced by the Aryans? Of course, we're talking about is Hinduism, of course, which is what they call it in the West and I guess in India too. And what was one of the original names that they called it? It was often called Sanatana Dharma because of the fact that Hinduism is based off of the idea of reincarnation and the idea of Dharma being important in the religion. What areas of it is most dominant? I told you that the Republic of India is where most people are Hindu in the world, like a majority. Nepal is also has got a majority. But all those countries around that I talked about, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they have basically people that are Hindu there, not a majority. And so does Indonesia, but not a majority. What is Brahman? Brahman is a Hindu theological idea that has to do with the universe. And it's the belief that everything is all part of one universe, supreme soul, if you want to call it that. I told you it's like the so-called ultimate ground of all being in the universe. So everything is part of Brahman, whether it be like all the gods they believe in, people's souls or every living thing's souls are part of Brahman. All objects that are not living or whatever, like the earth and everything, all planets or whatever, are all part of Brahman in general. Atman is the belief that living things have a soul. Not just people, but lesser living things as well. Reincarnation is the belief that basically living things go through a cycle of life and death. And then what happens is when you die, your soul gets reborn into another living thing. Samsara is just the internal cycle of reincarnation, which could go on for thousands of years. What are some things that can affect reincarnation? Karma, I told you. Karma is that your actions, things you do in your life and how they can affect your future or your next life, your destiny. So you can have good karma versus bad karma. Dharma, also, I told you, was the other thing that could affect reincarnation. That has to do with your obligations, moral duties, and so on, ethical conduct and things like that, how you treat yourself and how you treat others. Things like that. And that's what Dharma is. In Buddhism, it's a big thing, Dharma. They talk about the 8 Dharma. Moksha is the belief in Hinduism that eventually your soul will stop reincarnating and samsara will come to an end. And then the Buddhists have a kind of a similar version, same thing in Jainism. They call it nirvana. So it's kind of similar, but I don't think it's quite the same thing, but it's just like it. So that's basically kind of a review of what we lectured today. So if there are any questions, let me know. You don't have to, ask me, I guess, now if you don't want to. If anybody did have a question, let me know now and I can answer it. But later I will be, of course, posting this assignment later on my YouTube channel. So I'm going to post it up. So if you're subscribed to it, you'll see it, come up basically. But I already have the 10 o'clock up already. If you want to go ahead and start looking at that one. If you have any questions, you can just put it on there if you want to as well. But remember, you do get bonus points for asking questions, comments, about the lectures, every week, or even a past one that we did before. If you want to ask me a question, it doesn't matter. That's fine with me. Now, before I go, I want to remind you too, don't forget about the online first exam. Don't forget, about if you haven't taken it yet, you need to do that. So you'll get a 0 if you don't. So I have moved it up. I moved it up to Wednesday, September 30th. So you got some time left, 2 or 3 days, to finish it up. So try to get that done. And because you need to get that out of the way, because I am going to have some upcoming future quizzes we'll have later. I think I'm going to go ahead and just have one on that lectures from last week, from I guess week 5, I guess it is, on the Persians, Phoenicians, and Israelites. I'll do that probably first. And I will have a quiz on India coming up later as well. So be looking at these lectures later, especially if you've already finished your first exam. If you haven't finished your first exam yet, I wouldn't worry as much about these lectures right now, but you will have to later when you get to that. So that's it for today. I don't think there's really any questions, I guess, that anybody's got, I see. But let me know if you got any questions later, about the lectures. And that's it for today overall. And I hope y'all have a good rest of the week with your other classes going on. So that's it. And y'all take care. I'll see you with another lecture on Wednesday. So that's it.